Welcome back to Pistons Jack Chats, where I'll have a member from the NBA community and the Pistons community join me each and every week to discuss your Detroit Pistons. Before we get started, if you haven't already, could you please like, subscribe, drop a comment below? It just helps the channel grow and continue the content flowing. But let's get to it. We've got a very special guest today. We've got the Detroit Pistons beat writer and co-host of the Pistons Pulse Podcast from the Detroit Free Press, Omari Sankofa joining. Omari, what's going on, man?
It's going good, man. Appreciate you for having me on. I needed something to do. Like it, this was already set in stone before I knew what was going to happen. But this is like the highlight of my day because I've just been at my hotel in Houston because it snowed and the entire city shut down. So it's like I've just been at my hotel. Like I've had nothing to do all day except just wait for my flight tomorrow morning.
Oh, it's crazy. We were just briefly saying, I was just like, man, the weather and everything going on in the US right now is crazy. Like there's fires, there's snowstorms. Obviously, some of it's really tragic and horrible. But like, man, like down here in Australia, we're just enjoying the summer. I feel very lucky down here.
Yeah, I'm jealous. I was hoping to enjoy some warm weather down here, but somehow this is my second time being in Texas during a snowstorm. So I don't know what's going on.
Actually, speaking of, because I always envision Texas as like, I've never been there, but as like a warm to like hot place, almost like a desert kind of area. Am I off base there or?
No, like it's known for like desert, like heat, cactuses and whatnot. Like all that. It's not a state that gets snow usually.
Yeah, that was the thing. When I saw like these snowstorms and where are the teams stopping? Like Albuquerque or something. I was like, what? Man, it's snow in Texas? I don't know. It sounded weird.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's crazy.
But also, man, this is just really cool. Like, I just want to shout you out before we get into this. Like, it was pretty much 3 years ago to the day almost. It was early Feb, I want to say, around All-Star break, when I reached out to you when I was in New York at the time, but was coming down to Boston. And back then I really had never spoken to anyone in the media, honestly. And you were the first person to ever reply to me of someone that officially like worked in the space. So it's really cool to be back here a few years later. I listen to the Pistons Pulse, read your work. So just have you on the show, man. I really appreciate you making the time. And that chat we had, like that really helped me get to just where I am now. So I just wanted to say thank you for that again and shout out to you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. It's been cool to see you kind of take that and then run with it and carve out your own niche in the Pistons community. For me, it was just like, man, this dude is here from Australia and he's a hardcore Pistons fan. Like this dude is really about it. And then I ended up catching you at Summer League and you've been moving your way up. So yeah, I mean, was happy to do it and definitely happy to come back now a few years later and hop on your podcast.
Absolutely, man. I'm sure we'll cross paths in Detroit next month, which I'm very excited for. But let's get to it, man. Let's talk some Pistons. That's why the people are here. I normally open the show doing a bit of a vibe check. So the Pistons are currently 9th in the East. They're a game above 500. They could finish this week as high as 6th in the East if they get wins over the Hawks and the Magic. Just firstly, what's it been like covering a winning Pistons team? I believe, is this your 5th year on the beat?
Yeah, this is year 5 on the beat.
So I think that's pretty much when Troy started, maybe, or the first season, the COVID season. So just like, what's it been like this season compared to the last few?
Yeah, obviously it's been completely different, but I would say that this feels like, I would say the first 3 seasons all felt pretty similar. Like I came in probably a few months before they hired Troy, and those first 2 years were just very deliberate building, right? Building through the draft. They had the 2020 draft, 21 you get Cade, 22 you get Ivy and Duren. So no expectations. And then last season was like a weird fever dream. Like it was just kind of like of all the outcomes that were possibly available, like somehow you ended up with the worst possible outcome, and it was kind of somewhat surreal to cover it in real time, just because that you don't expect a step back, but you also don't expect that. So to go from that to now, this is probably the best team I've covered Even like I was in Memphis for a couple of years, and they were pretty solid. But I think this Pistons team is going to surpass them in wins. It's just a complete vibe shift. My usual patterns and habits throughout the course of the season haven't changed this season because the topics that they're dealing with in January and going into February are different than what it's been in the past, and it's been fun. I think it's definitely, after 4 years of it being pretty similar, I feel like this season has felt very unique in that regard, and the vibes have been significantly better as well. Like there's not the usual angst in the air, so you can definitely feel the difference.
Yeah, it's like you said last year, and we're not going to harp on it for too long, but it still haunts me to this day as a fan. like,
Yeah,
like it was just like you said, the worst possible outcome you could hit, and it was just a nightmare of a season. Like I can't imagine with yourself, like obviously you're a professional, it's your job, but trying to come up with stories and angles for this team, like it just must be so nice this season to be around the good vibes and just be able to write like positive stories and also just have like the fact we're talking playoffs to me is it's still kind of crazy. And that kind of leads me to my next question. Like, what were your expectations in the preseason? Um, and where do you think this team can kind of go?
yeah. I would say preseason, I probably had them between, like, maybe worst case scenario, you win 28, and then maybe best case you're like 36, maybe even 38, flirting with 500. Just looking around the East, you kind of look at, uh, you see that the Pistons have a window to at least be in that sort of 8 through 10 play in range coming in. So I saw that as like their best case scenario, right? Like Cade takes the next step, and the vets come in and do what you expect them to do. Some of the other young guys come along, and you more than double last year's win total, which, like, 28 being minimum is still like double what they won last season. So like that's low, but coming into the preseason, like that's still a pretty significant leap. I think to predict and then to go from there to 38, that did feel realistic. So I don't think I would have expected them to hit this type of strike this early into the year though. For them to win, I think 10 of 12 going into the halfway point of the season. It clicked really, really early. And if you are going to predict a mid-season run, you would expect that probably to be a little bit closer to the playoffs, but they figured it out after about 30 games.
Yeah, it's for me, it feels like this team the whole season, I feel like has been competitive for the most part. Like there's been a couple of blowouts, but honestly that happens to any team in the NBA. But to me, like the kind of dividing point feels like they lost to the Utah Jazz at home, I think late December, mid to late December, in a game everyone thought they would win. I think that put them to like, I want to say 11-17 on the year. 15 games since then, they go on that West Coast trip. They've suffered the Jaden Ivey injury, but I think they're 10-5 in that stretch, and they've been even better in January. What do you think's been the biggest change? There's probably been a heap, but is there anything that sticks out in particular in that stretch?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is just the level of shot making you need to win games, and to see the amount of clutch shots they've hit to reach this tier of success that they've hit over the last 15 games or so. They just haven't had, right? Like you did not have multiple players like you have this year, whether it's Cade or JI or THJ or Malik Beasley or even Tobias, like on any given night. All of those guys can make big plays for you offensively. And that's what it takes to just flirt with 500, right? They're 22 and 21, but you need a lot of shot making. And I think you compare that to last season and the season before, and you see how many games they were in, but just couldn't close out that they're closing out now. And that's been the biggest difference. I think you see, um, like, most NBA teams have two players who are an instant bucket, right? Like there's not a whole lot you can do to stop them. So I don't know if the Pistons have two of those types of players yet, but they have one, and then they have multiple role players that can heat up. So that's really what it is. Malik Beasley's like top 3 and 3-pointers made. It takes that level of shooting to compete in today's league.
Yeah, it's like Malik and even like Tim Hardaway Jr.'s had his moments where he's hit like a heap of key shots. Like there's that game against Miami where I think he went 9-0 run. Like those two in particular. So like even if they don't, like you said, have that second guy with Ivy out now, like it feels like one of those guys comes through. Maybe it's Tobias. But I guess, have you noticed maybe a shift? Do you think, like, part of me feels like maybe that West Coast trip all the way back in December, like where they get 3 wins in a row against the Lakers, Suns, and the Kings.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like they got some sort of confidence boost from that. Like the young guys to be like, oh, like I don't know if they've ever won 2 games in a row on the road out west. Like,
Mm-hmm.
like something. I feel like, have you noticed a shift in maybe the confidence, their ability to come back, or that kind of thing?
Yeah. So I would say to get Phoenix and the Lakers back to back, those were games going in that, just because of some of the injuries that Phoenix had, and like the Lakers have been good this season, but they haven't been like a top tier team in the West. Like those are like quote unquote gettable games. The Pistons play like a really sound game overall, but of course that's something that had been lacking when you're 11-17. So yeah, you like Cade has a great night. They go toe to toe with KD. That's a confidence booster, right? Then you go to LA and you do the exact same thing against Anthony Davis and LeBron James. That's a confidence booster, and you're doing this in sustainable ways. It's not like Cade had to score 45 in those games to win. You saw them as like a pretty team-wide effort. So those build confidence. And then the Sacramento game obviously was extremely improbable for them to be able to come back and win that game in the manner that they did. And yeah, that takes it to a different level because they've been on the receiving end of those types of performances a lot over the years. So, I think to finally be on the other side of that, and now you're sniffing 500, it's confidence. Like those things build confidence, and I think you couple that with Cade having a great season, then those things stack.
No, for sure. And just at the Lakers game, were you at that game? I feel like you definitely would have been.
So I was at the first 2. I was not at Sacramento
Okay.
because there was like that was around like Christmas weekend, and I wasn't going to do the entire trip. So I was like, okay, I'll do the first 2 games, like skip Sac, and then I'll meet up with Bryce in Denver, and that'll be the trip. And it just happened that was the most exciting game of the season. But I blame Christmas. I blame the schedule, and I blame Christmas for being like the day before.
I mean, I don't blame you for. I'm assuming you were with your family for Christmas.
I was.
I was going to ask after that Lakers game. Is that maybe the happiest you've seen Tom Gores?
Oh, I think for him, there's got to be some level of validation, right? Just to, like, especially after last season, come back and now you're putting a pretty good product on the floor. Yeah, I mean, this is the best team he's had in at least 6 years. You probably have to go back to 2018-19.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. I just remember seeing you on the sideline. It's just good viewing. But where I want to go next, the trade deadline is February 7th, which is what? Is that just over 2 weeks away? It's just around
a little bit over 2 weeks. Mm-hmm.
And I think like this team and the fan base is constantly talking about trades, but I really like the article you wrote earlier this week, and I'm not going to spoil it. I'll put it in the description here for everyone. But it was kind of just about, to me, like sort of patience and like, although the Pistons are winning, it doesn't mean they need to, like, for lack of a better term, maybe mortgage their future or go and sell the farm. Like, I guess, what are your expectations or maybe predictions heading into the trade deadline? Not so much names of players, but just kind of the approach that you sense from the front office.
Yeah, I think one thing this front office has been really savvy about is just making marginal moves that can move the needle forward. Like Malik Beasley, like it's a 1-year, $6 billion deal, right? And that's already, returned that tenfold. Or, you waive Paul Reed in this pocket of the season where you can allow him to clear waivers and then re-sign him. And you already have $10 million in cap space, but now you just shaved off an additional $4 million. And like, that's just something that you had planned. I think they've been pretty pragmatic about it. They've tried to shape this team without overcommitting to, a roster that going into the season, you don't know how good this roster is going to be, right? You weren't here for last season. You believe in the guys, obviously. You brought in vets to help these guys, but you don't know what to expect. So you look at it now, and this is like the best case scenario. You're winning games. You've had this 3.5 week stretch where you've been a top 6 team in the East, and it reshapes your expectations potentially going into next season. But that probably doesn't reshape your expectations as far as, well, where is this team at now, right? Because teams ebb and flow. And, just from being around the team, just from talking to people, I've not gotten the sense that they're at the point now to where they're like, oh, we have to buy. Like we have to go and, trade somebody and get a star and invest in all of this, because this team just still isn't tested, right? They haven't had a playoff series. There's a lot that they haven't seen. So I think they'll continue to find those kind of marginal moves, like whether that brings back an asset or another player who can come in and help, whether that be a backup point guard or somebody who can just relieve some of the ball handling pressure. I think they'll look at marginal moves such as that. And they do have cap space that they can utilize. So, they're not going to let that go to waste. But I'm not feeling big swing. It doesn't feel like they're at that point. It feels like more so what we have here is really good. The vibe is really good, and we don't want to mess with that. We want to sustain this and then add around that, but not shake things up. Like, we want to keep what's going on this season to continue to go.
Yeah, it's so interesting because, like, I think even Trajan might have said it himself when he was on one of the pregame shows in the past week. Like, they've kind of exceeded expectations internally. Like, they've exceeded everyone's expectations where they are, but they also, he's kind of set it up where they've got that 14 million in cap. I think they still have a free roster spot. So there's like a move there that, like, they've put themselves in such a good position to make a move. And like, I've definitely, I must admit, like a month ago or mid-December, early December, like I was moving towards like, okay, I don't mind Ingram or Levine, but I've definitely cooled on that now. But I still think they really probably just need some more ball handling. Like, and that's not even, I'm not even like, it's nothing against Marcus Sasser. I think just on top of him, they just really struggle sometimes when Cade's off the floor, obviously. But like, there's some names here, and I'm just going to throw them at you. They're all on either an expiring deal or a 2-year deal. And I just want you to, like, just curious if you could see the team being interested in any of these guys. So the first one's CJ McCollum. There's Dante Exum, Colin Sexton, Lonzo Ball, and Bruce Brown Jr. Now, all those guys I think are on over, I'm not sure what Exum's on, but the rest I think are on like 10 to 15 million or more. CJ in particular is on a lot more. But could you see them being interested in any of those type of names?
I think a lot of it just comes down to the price, right? Like, if you have a team that's offering genuine assets for a guy like a Bruce Brown, and I mean, he's someone who's proven he can help a team win a championship, right? The Pistons are bidding against teams who have assets to play with, right? Like Oklahoma City, they have first-round picks to spare. The Houston Rockets have first-round picks to spare. I think a lot of that will just be dictated by what can the Pistons get without giving much up. You're still down the first-round pick, which, if you keep winning this season, obviously you could like convey that and get off of that. So that's one way out of it. But yeah, otherwise, I'm not sure.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Well, it feels like, I will be shocked if they make, like, I just can't envision a world where they move any of the young core. Like, I can't see that at all.
And that's it. Like, you just look at just how good the chemistry is for this team. You look at the vets and how they've really embraced their roles. They're all contributing to winning. The vibes are really good. Like, the vibes are happy. And if there's one thing you don't want to do, especially as like a first-year front office that inherited this team that came off this bad season, is you don't want to ruin the good vibes, right? You don't want to trade a key veteran who has really kind of helped hold the group together, or like, that's something you want to preserve. So that's a line that they're going to toe. And when you talk about guys like Bruce Brown, you talk about guys like Lonzo Ball, CJ McCollum, these are all players who could help teams win. So along with that, a lot of contending teams don't have assets to spare as well. So, that's an area where the Pistons could capitalize as well, just given that they do have that cap space that they could leverage.
For sure. And I think, like, speaking for myself here, and I feel like a lot of fans, like, sometimes I think we've gotten a bit, like, excited with the winning. And the goal, I'm guilty of it. Like, the goalpost, sometimes I have to catch myself because sometimes I'm moving the goalpost too quickly. And it's like I'll lose my cool during a game because they have, like, a few turnovers. I'm like, oh, they need this and that. But when you zoom out, like, they literally just beat the number 2 seed in the West. Really impressive win. And it wasn't a perfect game for the team either, but that kind of takes me to Cade Cunningham. Like, I could go through numbers, but his season so far definitely exceeded my expectations. I think he's definitely going to be an all-star. Do you have a vote, by the way? I feel like you do.
Yeah, I did. I submitted my ballot yesterday, actually.
And do you also do you vote just on this while we're talking about it? Do you vote as well for end of season awards, or is it different kind of voting for all-star and then end of season?
Yeah, those votes just rotate between the beat writers. So I get each vote every 3 years. I honestly cannot remember if I get them the same year or if I get All-Star this year and then I believe I get All-NBA next year. So it's one of the two, but it's just a 3-year rotation pattern. So this just happened to be my year for All-Star.
Got you. Well, my question here is, like, first of all, what were you expecting out of Cade this season? And do you think he's a real threat or contender to make All NBA, like third team?
Yeah, so I would say coming into this season, you expect him to obviously build off of what he did last year, and last year was his previous best season where his efficiency increased a bit, his passing efficiency increased a bit, and you saw how he could, essentially still find ways to drive and get things done without having any help around him. So I think building off of that, you look at the additions of the veterans, and I figured he would come in and his assists would go up. I thought his scoring efficiency would increase a bit. I thought his street ball would look better. So a lot of what he's doing now is stuff I honestly thought he was probably capable of doing since his rookie season. But obviously, you don't know what exactly that's going to look like, right? And he's shooting around 38% from three. The pull-ups really become a weapon. We're seeing them regularly, take over second halves and really just having runs where, he could have 15 assists, but he could also give you 35 points, when you really need it, right? So he's excelled in so many different areas that, I think that's a bit tougher to project. But you look at what he's doing, and that's absolutely, to be all NBA caliber numbers, especially when you're doing it on a team that has by far been the most improved team in the NBA compared to last season. I think that's meaningful basketball, and that's typically what voters look for when they look at that type of award.
Yeah, it's been crazy. Like, you spoke about, like, some of the numbers he's putting up there, like 15 assist nights or 30 points. Like, I wasn't sure, like, heading into the season if, like, Cade could be like that high usage, like almost like Luka Doncic type role. I know he likes to play like that, but like I wasn't sure if that would necessarily lead to winning. But like you said, like, just bringing in some spacing has really opened up so much for him, like more than I even realized could. And the fact now, like, he's having these statement games, like he's gone to New York twice and had two of his best games as a pro. Even those wins, like against KD in Phoenix, like they're all these, like, kind of staple moments for him this season where I'm like, man, I just didn't expect this in year 4. Like, this is for me, like, maybe year 6 or 7, Cade. It's been crazy. So many moments within the awesome play.
Yeah, he's taken a step forward in so many different areas, and like that's what's tough to predict, right? Like, you're even seeing him, like his block numbers have been among the best among all guards, and like he has more so like wing size, but still, I think that's like what's special about him as a player, right? Is that he can impact the game in so many different ways, even if that's like being a weak side shot blocker or a fast break shot blocker. Like, he's had really big plays on both sides of the floor.
Yeah, it's been crazy. And I guess, is there anything you've observed behind the scenes or at games in the building that has shifted in Cade's kind of approach? Like, just for me, like, obviously watching it on TV or League Pass, like, sometimes it's hard to tell. Like, but is his demeanor changed on court? Like, he just seems Like, I feel like some of it's because of the winning, but I feel like he's grown as a leader this season, or he's more vocal, just something like that. Have you observed anything being at the games?
I feel like his demeanor in a lot of ways is still the same, and the way he's going about the job is still the same as he's going about it, like since the start. Honestly, like I feel like throughout this entire process, he's always been the same person, and he's always going about things pretty much the same way. The only difference is that he's finally starting to see, uh, results for everything that has been put in so far. So, I think there's probably more of a confidence and a swagger that you're seeing more frequently, just because, again, like you talk about the triple double at Madison Square Garden, and 19 points in the third quarter and a win over Houston on the road. He's had some really big performances, so I think you just add confidence on top of where he's been before, and you can see that demeanor change on the court a little bit, just in how he carries himself. But by and large, to me, he's still pretty much been the same guy.
Yeah, no, he's. I don't know. I just like that dunk last night. Maybe it's just the team's winning and that I'm just noticing a bit more. But I guess final thing on Cade, we kind of touched on it, but is there anything that like a certain amount of wins this team has to hit, or they're going to make the playoffs, that kind of thing, for you to see him making the All-NBA third team? Or is it just more of a continue on this kind of pathway and it's a real thing?
I think a lot of it will be tied to team record. I think the reality is just that there are not enough All NBA teams for the amount of deserving All NBA players, and we've kind of been at that point for a while. Although honestly, with the new injury limits, like that actually may even it out a bit, and favor guys like Cade who are carrying that heavy of a load. But we'll see. We'll see. Like I think he's going to have a great case, but the better the Pistons are, I think the stronger that case is going to be. Like to me, like 39-43 looks a lot worse than like 43-39, right? It'll be pretty marginal, but I think the more the Pistons win, the more likely it is that he'll get one of those spots.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you. Well, moving on from Cade, I want to talk about Assar Thompson. Your recent article was kind of on Assar, his relationship with the man, and just Assar's season to date. I believe in the article it said the Pistons are 9-2 with Assar in the starting lineup. I think there's some obvious things, but what have you noticed with Assar in the starting lineup that's really like helped the team have arguably their best stretch of the season?
Yeah, I think defensively he's given them just a lot of pop. Like I think he's just a guy. Obviously, he's taking the top defensive assignment, so that saves Cade and everybody else. The hassle of having to do that. I think you couple that with how strong he is as a rebounder. Like Houston is like one of the best rebounding teams in the league, and the Pistons like crushing them on the boards last night. Like, when you have Duren, Assar, Stu, and Cade rebounds, obviously, like that's a lot of rebounding, and I think Assar makes a tangible difference there. They've also been one of the top teams in like fast break points, and they've also been forcing more turnovers since Assar came into the starting lineup. And they weren't a team that forced a lot of turnovers before, so he's impacted that. And obviously, he gives you a play finisher and distributor in transition too. So he just does a lot of small things that really add up over the course of the game. And I think even though he's not a guy that can shoot the ball, and I think in some matchups that has hurt them, by and large, everything else he does, like I think it's made Cade's life easier. Like he's taking pressure off of everybody a little bit. And like with that, like with him on the floor, frees like THJ, whoever else up to just get the shots up that you need, right? Assar's the dirty work guy, and I think he raises the floor for this team because of that.
Yeah, no, and I think the Pistons in that span are like fourth in the NBA for defensive rating and that kind of thing. So, I mean, I feel like obviously when you think of Assar, it's the defense, but the transition stuff as well, like you mentioned, has been a huge boost. Just on him, I don't know if I missed this, but the minutes restriction, was there when they announced that, was there a timeline on that, or is it just a wait and see how he goes?
Yeah, it really is wait and see. We've never really gotten a firm timeline on what they're looking for specifically. But there have been times I think within that where some nights where Assar has been kind of noticeably gassed. So they'll take it week by week. But it's been about 2 months since he's come back, and it's been pretty consistently capped at 25. So so far, no real movement one way or another.
And final thing on Assar, there's some good stuff about him and a men's relationship in your article, so I don't want to spoil that. But have you got any like a little story about Assar? Like, because I had on Hunter Patterson probably a month ago now, and he was just saying how after every game, Assar was in there watching a men's tape immediately after the game. So anything on the Twins? Is there anything you've seen from them, like interactions or anything interesting?
Yeah, I think just the way that they drive each other, right? I talked to people at OTE about their time there. Former Piston Damian Wilkins is a GM over there, so you got to know Ahmed and Assar really well, and just everything about their approach to the game. Like, obviously, they're both like, uh, you know, first percentile athletes, like absolute top of the top. But along with that, just the way they process the game is so quick as well. So you watch them play and you see a lot of the same similarities, obviously, which they're twin brothers. So that's not that shocking, but still to like watch it, and you watch Assar so often that he just does ridiculous stuff. And then you watch his brother just casually operating out of the dunker spot and like rising up above 7-footers for lobs. Like, they're just different, so it's fun to see them on the court together and just the stuff that they could casually do. And also, I think they drive each other as well. Like, they're always competing on some level. So you see it more when they're together. But yeah, start watching his brother's tape. Like, clearly they're always trying to top each other, and they're paying attention to ways that they can do that.
No, they're awesome. Like they're like, I don't know what other twin duos. I think there's the Morris twins, Markeith and Marcus. I'm sure there's other twins, but those two, like,
Brooke and Robin Lopez.
Oh, of course, how can I forget them? But like the Thompson twins are insane. But I don't know what they're going to be in the future. They're both going to be really good, and they're like, that's ridiculous. I hope we see them on the same team one day. That'd be really cool. But last thing on the players before we get to some personal questions to round it out. Jaylen Duren. I almost feel bad for not kind of leading off the show with him, because he had what I thought was one of the best games of his career last night in Houston. But even in his past 11 games, he has the second highest net rating of any rotation player with a +10. And he's giving you 12 points, 11 boards, few assists, a steal, 1.5 blocks, and he's a free throw shootings returned as well, near 80%. And most importantly, in this time, the Pistons are a top 5 ranked defense. What's been the biggest change with Jaylen Duren? I feel like he's been the Pistons most in the firing line from the fan base, at least in the early portion of the season. What's been the big shift for him? Because he's playing some really, really good basketball.
Yeah, I think with Duren, it's never really been the ability, but just the moment-to-moment consistency, right? I think you see moments where clearly he can move extremely well for his size. Like, obviously he's a great athlete, and can time block shots with the best of them when he's locked. But you haven't seen, I think, that game to game and moment to moment consistency. And like, he came into the league young, right? Like, he turned 19. I want to say like November of his rookie season. And some of that's just a learning curve, especially for bigs. You come into the league, sometimes it takes 3 to 4 years for things to really click. And, I think more and more we're starting to see examples of that. Like, just his raw defensive numbers are up this season. Like, he's blocking more shots. I think the raw activity has been better. But we also see moments like, he had against Houston where, he had 12 points, 3 offensive rebounds in the opening quarter, 6 for 6. He's dominating the offensive glass. Like, he had 3 or 4 putback buckets. Obviously, the lob connection with Cade has been really strong all year. So, he's, I think, figuring out more and more like what his role is and how he can impact games. But also, too, I think Isaiah Stewart being back to center full time and the tone that Isaiah Stewart says, I think that's also to some extent like, Duren could see the impact that has on a game when Isaiah makes those types of plays on defense. So, those guys are really close. I'm sure there's a correlation there as well.
Yeah, no, like it feels like for sure that like Stu's definitely had a bit of an impact on JD, and I like that how you pointed out, like, it's never been ability. It's just like the moment to moment. It's not even game to game. Like, and it feels like those lapses he has moment to moment, like you highlighted, have definitely like shrunk in their frequency. And because he has all the talent, like no one's ever questioned that and the ability. So it's just been really good to see him because there was moments early in the season where like I felt like I just noticed his demeanor, like he almost looked like he was losing a little bit of confidence. Maybe like this is earlier on when it was real, like against like the Bulls when he had that struggle against Vooch and that kind of thing. But when he's energetic, getting up and down the court, like I think that was so impressive last night. Like Şengün's like probably going to be an all-star. He's been the Rockets' best player. And I know he can't stretch the floor, but like skilled bigs in the past have normally given JD trouble, but he thoroughly outplayed him from what I saw.
Yeah, no, he definitely physically dominated that matchup from the start. And he has to play to his strengths, right? I think stretch bigs have probably been his biggest sore spot defensively this season, but he really set the tone, got busy down low. He knew he was significantly stronger and more athletic than Şengün, and he just leveraged that from the get-go. And that has to be his counter, right? You could improve as like a closeout defender, but along with that, you could physically dominate down low, and there's like a psychological and like aspects to that as well that again, like when you're doing that, like your teammates are going to feed off of that. And the Pistons were up 15 like 14 minutes into the game. Duren had a lot to do with that.
No, exactly right. No, it's just been good to see because I mean I was pretty critical of him. I know a lot of people were, so it's good to see him have this growth and like bounce back. But before we wrap up the show here, Omari, I always like to ask my guests some personal questions, get some insight into them, the person they are. So a couple of questions here about your job. You're currently actually on the road, but what is the city you most enjoy traveling to?
So I'm always biased toward warm cities. So I would say like it's a city that I think everybody finds beautiful, but Miami, you go to Miami and you have the beach and like you can smell like the salt in the air, and like I just like it's a great place to be for like a day and a half, 2 days, however you're there, how long you're there in the middle of the season. I like LA, I like San Francisco, those types of cities. And I also like Portland. I think Portland has a lot of really good food, and I'd never been to like that region of the country, Pacific Northwest, before then, and it's just a nice, comfy vibe. So, in some order, that's probably my top four. I know you asked for favorite city, but those are all in the same tier.
With Miami, so I've never been to Miami, but like, are you staying like right near the beach, like walking distance, or?
It kind of varies. So like I've stayed in like there's an AC in Wynwood. I've stayed at a few times, and Wynwood is not by the water. Like you could probably get to the water in like a 20-25 minute walk, but it's in more of like an artsy neighborhood. I stayed off of Biscayne Bay this past time, and that's pretty close to the water. That's actually not too far from the arena either. And I've stayed on South Beach before, which is cool, but because you're near the water, but it's also extremely cramped. So yeah, I mean they all vary, but whenever you can get there, and like the hotels on South Beach aren't crazy, because a lot of times they can be. It's definitely pretty unique to not be too far from the beach, pretty much from any given direction.
Got you. And you don't have to answer this one, but I'm gonna ask it. Is there a city that you least look forward to traveling to? I don't want to get you in any trouble, but
yeah. Yeah, like I would say, I really do like most of the cities. I would say the other cold Midwest cities are like, it's just tough for me. Like I'm born and raised in Detroit. Like of course I spend most of my time in Detroit. I'm biased toward Detroit. Chicago is a great city. I'm never excited to go to Cleveland. I'm never excited to go to Indianapolis and Milwaukee. I'm just like, they're not bad places. That it's just never like. So like if I'm going to be cold in the Midwest, I'd rather be cold in the Midwest, like at home, So they're not offering me anything else except more of the same, but like not at home. So
it's just purely weather. It's nothing else. Just purely weather. We don't want to get
pretty much. Because like there's other cold cities, but like like New York has like a lot going on. Like Philly, like they're like bigger cities. So
Yeah, I guess. And last one on like kind of the travel, you kind of answered it, but most underrated place you visited.
most underrated. Like I would say Portland's up there for sure. I lived in Memphis. Like I think Memphis is a really fun city. Like it's a great late night city. You have great food. Like people hate on Memphis, but I always defend Memphis, and I think Memphis really is pretty underrated. If you know where to go, like you could have a great time, and again, like it really is a great food city too. There's probably a couple other underrated cities, but that's the main one that comes to mind. Like I think Memphis is way better than people give it credit for.
Love it. All right, moving on. So correct me if I'm wrong here, but you did support the Pistons growing up. Like you're from Detroit, you love basketball.
Yeah. I was like 10 years old when they won the championship, So, like I was watching those games with like my whole family, like mom, dad, siblings, uncles, aunts. Like it was like an event for sure.
Okay, we'll do a couple of quick ones here. So favorite player of all time, and then favorite team of all time.
Favorite player of all time. Honestly, like I'm probably gonna go with Dwayne Wade. Like I think he was the one guy, like outside of the Pistons that I would always go out of my way to watch. Um, if I'm just going favorite team of all time, like yeah, like the Pistons were like my childhood team growing up. Like I watched all those games, and like I would say I probably watched at least 3/4 of the games from like 2007 until maybe like 15 or 16 or so. Like once I got pretty close to like finishing up college, um, but yeah, I mean, that was the team that got me into basketball. And the relationship obviously is a lot different now, but you still gotta have those memories from when you were younger, obviously. So
Of course. No, I love it. And then since covering the Pistons in the past 5 years, what would be your favorite moment? It can be an interaction with someone, just like anything, like a highlight.
like there's a lot of different ways to go with it. I would just say becoming a podcaster has been great. Like I go and plug the Pistons Post for Butter City Hoops. Like we've had a great time doing that pod over the last 2.5, coming up on 3 years actually, I believe in March, which is crazy. Time flies, but that's been cool. Like coming in, I don't know if I expected that I would be over 150 episodes deep into a podcast. It's been a ton of fun, and it's been awesome working alongside Bryce, and I'll probably go with that for sure.
I love it. And have you missed? I feel like you've only missed like 1 week.
Yeah, I've probably over the course of the whole thing, there's maybe 1 or 2 episodes I haven't done, and I don't know if Bryce has missed one.
That's insane.
So yeah. Yeah,
Like,
our attendance record is pretty great, and I think there's only 1 week that whole time we did not do a pod. Like I think we've done every single week except one for almost 3 years.
man, like credit to you guys, like
Yeah,
because I mean you guys have good chemistry, obviously, but like this team probably has been tough to cover it sometimes. Like spending an hour each week. So no, it's a credit to you guys, and yeah, this also everyone watching this would listen. So go listen if for some reason you aren't. But yeah, you two do an awesome job. Last one. Best piece of advice you would give to someone looking to get into the NBA media landscape?
yeah, just to work and just to do it. Like if you think you can do it, then you owe it to yourself to give it your best shot, right? I think there's like my path to it was very traditional, where I worked for like my student paper and kind of went up through the newspaper path, and that's still available. Like if you're in high school, you can join a high school paper or a college paper or student radio, whatever it is you want to do media wise. All that stuff stacks and carries over. But you also have people that got into it through non-traditional backgrounds as well. I think Zach Lowe was like a teacher or something. Like at one point, like it's never too late to get into it, and if you work at it, like you polish your skills on the go, like Jack, like you've worked your way up over the last 3 years, just organically, right? Like you just started doing it, and you stack skills and opportunities, and I think it all kind of snowballs. So that's really all I can. The only advice I could give is just to work. Like if you want to do it, like work and keep working at it and keep honing your craft and talking to people and finding opportunities. And, if you're good at it and you're really honing your skills, those doors eventually will begin to open up for you.
No, absolutely. I like what you said there. Just do it. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like I didn't really believe in myself, honestly. But I for so long, I love basketball so much, but I was too scared to even try and figure out how to make a career in it or a job or just even do stuff for fun. Honestly, but it's just do it. If you got this passion for it, just do it and work really hard. And people are gonna say no to you, or you might it's gonna be a journey, and it always is. But just have a crack and go for it.
Yeah, and if you have a passion for it, it's never going to feel hard. It will be it's hard, but you're always going to feel, I think, that motivation because it's something that motivates you, right? And I think that as you get more opportunities and whatnot, then you become more confident in it as well. So, but you just have to start, and you just have to get past kind of rough, I don't know what I'm doing patch, and you just have to embrace it and write it out. I think once you get past that point, it gets easier.
No, definitely. And just, back yourself, be confident. But it's a ride, but it's fun. And it's like you said, if you're passionate, it's the most rewarding thing you'll do. So dive in. But look, man, I'm pretty impressed. We've kept this to exactly pretty much 45 minutes. I'm quite proud of myself for actually sticking to this today. So look, man, thank you so much for joining. I'm sure everyone knows where they can find your work, listen to the podcast, but please just quickly plug what you're up to and where all your work is so people can keep up to date.
Yeah, for sure. You can follow me on Twitter at my first and last name, OMARI SANKOFA. My work is at the Detroit Free Press, freep.com. And as we mentioned earlier, you can also find me along with Border City Hoops, Bryce Simon, at the Pistons Post. And we record every single week. So thanks for having me.
No worries, man. I'll have links to everything down below to all your stuff for those that might not be able to find it. But that's going to do it for today's show, guys. Thanks so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, and drop a comment below.